Mescaline is a hallucinogenic compound with a long history of traditional use. It's found in many different cacti, with the most well-known being peyote. Mescaline produces similar changes in perception to LSD, but not quite in the same way. Mescaline is a hallucinogenic compound most notably found in the peyote cactus, or Lophophora williamsi. It's also found in varying degrees in many other members of the cactus family. It's an alkaloid in the phenethylamine class of compounds, which includes other hallucinogens as well as various stimulants, decongestants, and antidepressants. Research suggests that mescaline alters consciousness similarly to the psychedelics psilocybin from magic mushrooms and LSD. Mescaline is found in high levels in the peyote cactus, and it acts as the major active compound. It's concentrated in the small, circular, above-ground stem tops called buttons. Mescaline content in the dried buttons ranges from 2.8% to 3.5%. Peyote also contains other psychoactive alkaloids that may intensify the effects of mescaline. According to some researchers, mescaline is one of the oldest known hallucinogens used by humans. One estimate suggests that Native Americans in Mexico used peyote as far back as 5,700 years ago. Allegedly, they considered it to be a divine substance with healing properties. Indigenous peoples of South America have reportedly used mescaline-containing compounds, such as the San Pedro cactus and the Peruvian torch cactus, in folk medicine and religious ceremonies for thousands of years. Scientific interest in peyote took off at the end of the 19th century, after American newspaper reports of the ritualistic use of peyote by Native American tribes. The search was on to reveal the compounds responsible for peyote's psychedelic effects. This task was accomplished in 1896 by the German chemist Arthur Hefter. After identifying mescaline as one of the alkaloids in peyote, he tested it on himself and was able to prove that it was responsible for the psychoactive effects from the cactus. In 1919, Australian chemist Ernest Spaat found a way to take mescaline into the lab. Shortly after that, some experimentally minded researchers and scientists began dosing themselves and publishing their findings. Psychiatrists in the 1930s and 1940s became particularly interested in mescaline's ability to mimic certain features of psychosis, a mental condition in which a person loses contact with reality. It can be caused by mental illness like schizophrenia, as well as medications and also life-threatening medical conditions. They thought that by artificially recreating the subjective experience of psychosis, they could better understand the condition. In the 1950s, British psychiatrist Humphrey Osmond began studying mescaline and LSD's ability to address mental illness, including alcohol addiction. He was somewhat successful, however, his work was cut short by the drugs backlash of the 1960s. He also had great success treating schizophrenia with large doses of niacinamide, a version of vitamin B3. Osmond later became friends with Aldous Huxley. The famous writer was introduced to mescaline after reading one of Osmond's papers and requested a sample. Huxley then went on to publish his seminal book, The Doors of Perception, which gave a detailed account of his experiences with mescaline and spurred public interest in the drug. Mescaline is illegal in most countries. However, mescaline in the form of peyote is legal for religious use by members of the Native American Church. This is a religion that combines Native American beliefs and practices with Christianity and ritualistic peyote use. Clinical research on mescaline was limited after the 1970s ban. Although recent years have seen an increase in research on hallucinogens such as psilocybin, mescaline has not been included in this resurgence due to its relative low potency and long duration of effects in comparison. The primary mechanism by which mescaline causes hallucinogenic effects is by activating the 5-HT2A serotonin receptors. All psychedelic drugs, including psilocybin, LSD, and DMT, share this mechanism. Mescaline, however, also activates other serotonin receptors, the 5-HT1A, the 5-HT2B, and the 5-HT2C. This may contribute to its other effects. These receptors have been implicated in learning and memory, anxiety, mood, and sleep. Besides serotonin receptors, mescaline also activates dopamine receptors in areas of the brain responsible for processing sound and emotions. This may contribute to the drug's effect of distorted hearing and enhanced emotions. Limited research suggests that mescaline can increase blood flow and activity in the prefrontal cortex, an area of the brain implicated in planning and pursuing goals, solving problems, self-identity, and regulating emotions and behavior. Some scientists hypothesize that this may affect creativity and focus and possibly underlie the change in self-identity. By activating neurons in a part of the brain called the locus coeruleus, mescaline is hypothesized to increase the response to stimuli in the environment. According to one unverified theory, this may explain why some users become more sensitive to what's happening in their environment and why set and setting is considered to be crucial during the psychedelic experience. Mescaline might also block the release of acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter that's used to contract muscles. This in turn blocks cholinergic activity and may lead to the side effect such as muscle weakness and poor balance and coordination that can be experienced while under the influence of mescaline. Mescaline causes a heightened perception of colors, making them more vibrant and intense. Like most psychedelics, it can cause intense visual hallucinations. They've often been described as vibrantly colored patterns, including fractals that occur more readily in dim light. Hallucinations of sound, smell, and taste can occur, but are much less common. Research and anecdotes suggest that it also causes a distorted sense of time, so that the user becomes unsure of how long they've been under the effects of the drug. Hearing and perception of space may also be distorted. Some people indicate that mescaline can cause synesthesia, a phenomenon in which senses become mixed. For example, certain sounds can cause sensations in parts of the body, or certain letters or numbers can be associated with different colors. According to another report, users may also feel as if their body is weightless and their limbs have changed size and shape. Common to all psychedelics, mescaline can alter the user's concept of self. Research suggests that higher doses can cause ego dissolution, a complete loss of the sense of self and the boundaries between self and the rest of the world. Anecdotally, mescaline is said to often produce a dreamlike state of profound wonder. This state of mind may be accompanied by a feeling of euphoria. Interestingly, these kind of changes have also been scientifically studied. They can be tracked using a specific questionnaire, the Altered States of Consciousness questionnaire. Some studies imply that LSD is 1,000 to 3,000 times more powerful than mescaline. Research suggests that the effects of both compounds can last up to 12 hours with higher doses. However, mescaline tends to last slightly longer. Because they share the same mechanisms of action, mescaline and LSD have very similar effects. They both cause hallucinations, increase suggestibility, intensify emotions and color perception, and they may create a subjective sense of deep mysticism or profound wonder. However, users do report slightly different subjective experiences, suggesting they may work differently in certain aspects. For example, mescaline is more likely to distort the user's body image, while the loss of control of thoughts is more commonly reported on LSD. LSD may also cause sexual feelings, somewhat rarely reported in mescaline users. The enhancement of colours appears to be more common with mescaline. Another key difference between the two is that mescaline has not been reported to produce flashbacks, also known as hallucinogen persisting perception disorder, or HPPD. Flashbacks occur when visual and auditory disturbances previously experienced during a trip reappear when not using the drug. Despite their differences in potency and effects, some researchers think that mescaline and LSD have enough in common that they're hard to tell apart. In fact, in a blinded clinical trial, people were unable to distinguish which one that they had been given. A couple of researchers were interested in whether mescaline can affect creativity and problem-solving skills back in the 60s. In studies from the 60s, mescaline seemed to produce changes in thinking that were implied in creativity. For example, the authors suggested it improved the ability to make associations between unrelated concepts or ideas. It reduced inhibitions and self-judgment, and it enhanced imagination. Researchers wondered if these effects could translate into solving problems that require creative thinking. To do so, they recruited 27 people who worked in jobs that require creative problem-solving abilities, like engineers, physicists, and furniture designers. The researchers gave them 200 milligrams of mescaline sulfate and then told them to work on problems related to their field that required a creative solution. The participants also took tests to measure their creativity both before and during the mescaline session. Research suggested that mescaline increased creativity as measured by the tests. It was also proposed to improve their ability to solve creative problems by boosting concentration, increasing the capacity for visual imagery, improving the ability to see problems from different angles, and improving the sense of knowing when the right solution appears. Purportedly, these improvements were still seen when the participants were assessed 2 weeks later. The author thought that mescaline might put people into the right mindset for creative problem solving, but this has never been verified in other clinical trials. One study looked at the mental health of 61 long-term peyote users in the Native American church compared to 79 members of the Navajo tribe with no or little history of drug use. According to the study, peyote users reported better psychological well-being and more positive emotions. Another study of over 130,000 people suggested that mescaline was linked to lower rates of both serious psychological distress and needing psychiatric medication compared to never using the drug. Mescaline use was also associated with a lower rate of agoraphobia and anxiety disorder, in which people fear environments that might cause them to feel trapped or helpless. Some scientists think that serotonin receptor activators may have the potential to treat alcohol and cocaine dependence. A couple of clinical trials suggested that LSD has the potential to help with alcoholism, but large-scale data is lacking. Nonetheless, some research teams are interested in further exploring mescaline due to its comparable mechanism of action and effects. There has also been sporadic reports of members of the Native American Church using peyote to prevent alcohol abuse. The effects of mescaline on learning in humans are unknown. In higher doses, mescaline improved learning in goldfish. However, lower doses actually decreased their ability to learn to avoid a negative stimulus. Some research suggests that taking mescaline in a safe and familiar environment may help to reduce the risk of harm, but this has never been verified in human studies. Mescaline caused brain, spinal cord, and liver issues in newborns of pregnant animals. Psychiatrist Humphrey Osmond who used mescaline in his practice, noted that people who had hepatitis experienced prolonged responses to mescaline. The long-term risks of mescaline are unknown since proper clinical data is lacking. A study of 61 Native American church members claimed that peyote use had no negative effect on mental function or psychology. Another study of 130,000 people didn't find any association between mescaline or peyote use and the rates of mental health issues. Mescaline can produce a wide range of effects on the body, including dilated pupils, blurred vision, sweating, dry mouth, elevated heart rate, high blood pressure, fidgeting and restlessness, muscle weakness, poor coordination and balance, headaches, nausea and vomiting. During the first 4 hours, body temperature might slightly decline. Thereafter, body temperature increases and may become moderately high. Blood sugar may also rise rapidly for the first hour and then possibly return to normal over the course of the following couple of hours. Side effects tend to resolve within 24 hours. Mescaline has the potential to cause negative thoughts and emotions, including sadness and irritability, fear, anxiety and nervous excitement, depersonalization, difficulty expressing thoughts and focusing, delusions, and paranoia. The 5-HT2A receptor is thought to play a key role in the development of schizophrenia and psychosis. By activating the receptor, mescaline can produce temporary changes in the brain that mimic those seen in psychotic episodes caused by schizophrenia. No studies have clearly demonstrated that mescaline causes psychosis or schizophrenia, though. There's a case report of one otherwise healthy person undergoing a 2-week-long psychotic episode after taking peyote, in which they experienced visual and auditory hallucinations and could barely sleep. Their symptoms, however, resolved once they were able to get proper sleep. There have been a few clinical trials examining the effects of mescaline in chronic schizophrenics. The drug produces similar effects in this population as it does in normal volunteers, including visual hallucinations, distorted body image, distorted sense of time, euphoria, paranoia. However, mescaline also caused schizophrenic patients to become highly sexual, verbalizing sexual desire and past experience. This is rare in normal volunteers. In general, the hallucinogenic experience is much more intense for schizophrenic patients and causes a notable increase in anxiety and disorganized thoughts. Mescaline appears to enhance symptoms specific to the types of schizophrenia that the patient has, such as paranoia, fear, and disorganized thinking. Despite the increase in symptoms, the experiences have been described as potentially useful in some patients. In a study of 24 hospitalized schizophrenics, one patient was able to return home after significant improvement was seen in her condition. 7 other patients experienced partial improvements, but their symptoms returned within the following weeks. Drugs that block the 5-HT2A receptor have been suggested to reduce the effects of mescaline. These include antidepressants, antipsychotics, and Peyote, which is used to treat migraines. Members of the Native American Church warn against combining mescaline with alcohol. Studies imply that mescaline does not pass through the blood-brain barrier very well. Theoretically, this means that higher doses are needed for a psychoactive effect. Likely because of this, mescaline is used less frequently than other psychedelic hallucinogens like psilocybin and LSD. In clinical trials, doses between 200 to 500 milligrams of mescaline sulfate were used. The scientifically described hallucinogenic dose was 5 milligrams per kg body weight, or 350 milligrams for a 70 kg person. Each peyote button contains around 45 milligrams of mescaline. The buttons are usually dried and people eat them or they're soaked in water and then drank. Research suggests that a tolerance to mescaline builds after repeated use over the course of days. Taking mescaline may also cause tolerance to LSD and vice versa. A cross-tolerance with psilocybin is also likely due to their similar effects on serotonin receptors. According to one study, a cross-tolerance may also occur with morphine.